So I'm hoping you can see those slides now. So we're just going to have a quick recap on today. So in terms of what we've covered today, this morning, to kick us off, we had an introduction to the assignment and a discussion around how things were going to go on the plan of the day. And I know throughout the day you've had access to a Padlet to ask assignment questions, and I think that's been really helpful. And I think last I looked, there were some really good questions on there that are really helpful to put on a Padlet, because then other people can see them as well. Because if you're thinking it, somebody else is probably thinking it as well. So I think that's been a really helpful tool for us today. Then with my session this morning, we looked about sort of the core key principles of inclusion, some benefits, some challenges that we faced, and key sort of things that need to be in place in order to really drive forward that inclusive classroom practice. Then we had an Ask the Expert panel discussion with Kate and Lucy this morning, which was really insightful and really interesting, I think, to have different perspectives from different settings. And then obviously this afternoon, you've talked a lot about policies, your own school policies, and unpicking these in terms of things like ALP, ULP, and identification of need as well. So that has been what we've done today. We've had a very busy day and we've talked a lot. And again, I think on behalf of the team, we're very grateful for your contributions today on the Padlet and, you know, in conversation as well. You know, really thanks for your efforts there. It's been really good for us to see your ideas and have a nice little chat with you as well. So if we think about the Ask the Expert panel, just some messages that I picked up when I was listening to Lucy and Kate. I think one of the first things that they spoke about was how children really need to be at the centre of that decision making, you know, for us to make purposeful decisions for provision and to develop our own inclusive practice. We really do have to think of children as individuals, what they need, and their own goals and their own aspirations, and then the role that we play within that. And then reframing, I suppose, the way that we think about things as well, you know, which really ties into that social model lens. So one of the examples that we spoke about in the Ask the Expert discussion was, you know, we ask, are children ready for school, but do we ask, are schools ready for children? You know, really thinking about how we adapt those environments for the children to develop that sense of belonging and to access opportunities as well. Another key message was that inclusion or inclusive practice shouldn't be seen as almost like an add-on or something additional that we do. It should really be embedded in our practice, you know, day to day, really driven by that moral purpose and our morals that drive forward our own personal inclusive practice. We talked about some challenges, and some of the challenges that came up were, you know, differences in policies and the ramifications that can have sometimes. Sometimes there's gaps in like curriculum design, for example. I think we talked about sort of pre-progression step 1, and sometimes service availability as well. So if we need support, but maybe we can't access it, you know, what happens then? One sort of example that I thought was really interesting was that idea of those 3 enablers from the Welsh Government. So effective environments that was shared this morning was about celebrating success with the children and young people, enabling adults, so making sure that that person really has that drive to want to find out more, to want to adapt, and responding in the moment as well. So again, back to what you guys said this morning, inclusion looks different day to day, cohort to cohort, week by week. So really being responsive to those moments and thinking about those adaptations. And then engaging experiences. So really looking at how the curriculum is taught and looking at how we can adapt the curriculum for the learners. And I think we had a really brilliant example about Minecraft and teaching biology, which was, I know there were lots of claps at that point. So I think we were all really impressed by those examples. And then just sort of rounding off then how important it is that early intervention really is key to organise that support. So, you know, supporting the families, supporting the learners, and then understanding that as teachers and educators, we're not meant to know the answers all of the time, and we don't know the answers all of the time. And it's okay to say, I need some help, or I need to collaborate, or I need some professional learning, and really reaching out to get that support so that we can be the very best, you know, versions of ourselves as educators, and then we can plan, you know, really enriching curriculum opportunities for our learners then as well. So that's not all we discussed because it was such a jam-packed Ask the Expert session with so many interesting points, but they are just some things that I picked out. And as listeners, you might have picked up other things as well. So I think we really got a lot out of this session. Moving on, I suppose, what are the next steps? So over the coming weeks now, you should receive communications from your universities about some optional sessions for you to attend. Continue to work on that Pebble pad. So, work your way through course run 3 and course run 4, ready for your next conference Saturday, which will be on the 18th of November. I think a few people have had trickiness with accessing Pebble pads. If that's the case, I would maybe contact the university just to make sure we've got that up and running ready for you. And then really starting to think about that assignment now. So you would have talked a little bit about it in your induction evening, and you may be thinking about it today now as well after our discussion. So maybe thinking about the next steps of some strategies you'd like to include, thinking about reflective theories and how you can sort of combine those together then for your assignment. So the assignment, I won't go too much into this because you've had some input on it, but the general sort of title is to create strategies to support inclusive classroom practice, and then a reflection of their effectiveness. And as Di pointed out this morning, we don't necessarily need you to create something brand new. We just want you to think about strategies that have been put into practice and then really reflecting on the journey that you've been on with that strategy or resource then. You can identify up to 3 different strategies. So maybe over the coming weeks now, starting to think about some of those strategies that are already maybe sticking out to you or that you're thinking about and reflecting about, and maybe having those conversations then with your university in your optional sessions about some really effective strategies that you think would make good conversation points in your assignments then. So the first part of your assignment is all about you providing that overview of your setting. But also attaching that discussion around things like policies in place, legislation, how does your setting currently link and connect with legislation and policy, and does it challenge current practice? So that's around 500 words. So potentially you could start maybe making notes around this section, especially after today where we've talked a lot about legislation and policies and things like that. And obviously you are the experts of your own setting. So potentially you could start mapping the first part of that out already. You're going to need to use an identified reflective theory to really draw on those experiences as well. These are some of the sort of questions that we would advise, to really challenge that reflection. In terms of a reflective theory, I know we mentioned a few this morning, so Gibbs, Kolb, that kind of thing, Brookfield lens. In our next conference Saturday, you'll have a session around those reflective theories. So we'll talk you through and give you some examples of reflective theories. However, there are many reflective theories out there. So if you've got one that maybe you use regularly or you've used before that you think suits your practice really well, you could always bring that into it. It doesn't have to be the ones that we give you. But we will be giving you some examples in the next conference Saturday. So maybe starting to think about the type of reflective theories that you're drawn to, that you enjoy reading about, and that you enjoy using maybe in your practice. The assignment criteria should be available to you now to have a little look through. So maybe become really familiar with that assessment criteria. I know we shared it this morning, but maybe if there's anything you're unsure about or you're not quite sure what it means in terms of your context, maybe there are some questions that you could bring to your next optional session, or, you could always contact your lecturers as well to just clarify what it means so that you've got all the tools you need now to really get started in terms of planning this assignment. So all of today's sessions will be have been recorded, and they should be with you as soon as possible. So they'll be uploaded onto PebblePad, so links should be there. And then you'll notice on the far right there's an assignment guidance tab as well. So there's extra resources for you to have a little look at in your own time as well to support you with the planning of this assignment. So are there any questions about anything at all, or anything that you feel that you need to ask before you leave today? If I just stop recording.